Welcome to Framework. I'm John, one of the hosts of Framework. With me, as always, the other host of Framework, Al. How are you today, Al?
I'm all right, man. Getting over a little bit of illness in our household, but we're on the upswing now and ready to tackle one of just the happiest topics we've ever done.
One of the happiest. A man known for his happiness. Steve Buscemi is the subject of today's conversation. And, of course, we couldn't have this conversation without one of the foremost Steve Buscemi scholars on Earth, I think. I believe that's correct. Chris Prentice, welcome back to the show.
I appreciate being back. And, boy, Earth must be a pretty small planet if I'm one of the preeminent Steve Buscemi scholars, because I think one of the great things about Steve Buscemi is really nobody can be a complete Steve Buscemi scholar, because he's just done so much that no one man can really watch and appreciate all of it, but that's one of his gifts.
I think he has 170 some odd IMDb credits, and it's not like he does one thing that you can nail him down to exactly. I mean, he's such a distinctive looking person. That's, if you're keeping score, that's our first euphemism for ugly we're going to use today.
We're going to get into the ugly thing. I don't. Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay.
But he's done so much work with so many people. He's a part of these different filmmakers like stables. He works with the Coens consistently. He works with Tarantino consistently. He works with David Chase and he does all this different stuff. And yet there's not like one. I don't know what like if you're an action movie fan, you're gonna be an Arnold aficionado by default. I don't know what there's one thing you can be into that makes you a Steve Buscemi head automatically.
Well,
everybody's gonna love
90s film bro is you got your bases pretty covered there.
But that's one decade out of four of highly active decades.
Yeah.
For certain.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say if you're just into 90s cinema, you're totally going to be into Steve Buscemi. Beyond that, I don't know, because I know he had a TBS show within the last few years. I never watched it, so maybe people really enjoyed that. I know some people did. I know for some reason I see TBS original comedy and I just am like, nah, no, thank you. But maybe it had a lot to offer.
Well, here's the thing: it doesn't have that much to offer. It's not a great show, but the consistent pleasure in it is Buscemi. He is having an absolute ball.
That's kind of his place nowadays. He seems to just show up when he thinks something looks fun or interesting. He's not chasing a brass ring at this point. He's kind of just content to be a character actor in old age, which does seem to be a pretty good way to be. That show, Miracle Workers, I tried to watch it before this episode, and it's hard to find. I couldn't do it without buying it, which is inexcusable in this day and age.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just I happen to be a fan of the creator of the show, who was a former Saturday Night Live writer. He did another sketch show called Man Seeking Woman that I was like one of the three fans of, and I had read the book that it was based on, and of course Buscemi was enough for me to set a DVR thing for it and catch it when it actually was airing.
It's Daniel Radcliffe too, right? I like him too. He's good.
Daniel Radcliffe seems like he's trying, after being Harry Potter, is trying to transition into being Steve Buscemi. Like that seems to be his career role model. Is just do what Steve Buscemi was doing in his 60s.
Well, I would have much preferred Buscemi as the star of Guns Akimbo.
See, here I thought you were going to go straight to Equus.
I don't know. He could have been that guy in the corpse. He could have played the corpse in that movie. That's a Buscemi role if ever there was one.
Oh yeah, in the 90s that would have been a Buscemi role.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We could do it now. It's just a corpse. Doesn't have to be young. So, classic framework. We started with the absolute most recent end of his career credits here.
Sure.
The idea was to kind of chart the rise of Buscemi over the years, from his humble origins in Brooklyn, New York, where, this is like, he doesn't really have that much of an interesting backstory. He was interested in acting and pursued it and was successful.
What wasn't he a firefighter?
Yeah, he was a firefighter for like 4 years. That was like his day job. And then he got successful enough to continue to drop it and act. Reservoir Dogs, that's the breakout, but he's in movies for like a decade before that. He stars in a few,
right?
That you haven't heard of. Things called Ed and His Dead Mother, I believe. Stuff like that. So he's like making the rounds already. He is, by all accounts, succeeding more than 95% of the actors in New York or LA are. And then he gets Reservoir Dogs. So, and then with that film, the Steve Buscemi character.
Yeah, I feel like when Reservoir Dogs came out, like I was kind of too young to see it when it first came out, but I would always, every single show would play the clip of the naming of the crew and I Don't Want to Be Mr. Pink. And that was kind of my first experience. I'd be like, who the hell is this guy? I've never seen this guy in anything. This guy is very odd looking. And so, I mean, that's kind of like the earliest that I really remember being like, who is that? And now, I mean, I've seen movies since then and TV shows where he did pop up, and like King of New York, and he had a bit on a Miami Vice where he gets strong armed by Willie Nelson. And so yeah, he was doing a lot of stuff before that, but man, he really got, even if like me, you didn't see Reservoir Dogs when it first came out. I mean, that clip of the whole Mr. Pink thing, that was being played on pretty much every talk show and movie review show out there.
I think like most people, I'm guessing, I saw Pulp Fiction and then immediately went and saw Reservoir Dogs after that. Kind of thing, I was just like, oh shit, gotta see the first. What's the last one like? And that, I believe, aside from movies that I don't remember seeing him in, like Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, and some of his minor Coen brother roles, I suppose I would have seen at that point. Miller's Crossing. I was introduced to him by Reservoir Dogs, and he's in Pulp Fiction too, and I just didn't notice him because I didn't know him at the time.
I think it's kind of, so we talk about him being part of the Tarantino stable. I don't think he's done anything with him since the short bit in Pulp Fiction. Was he in? Yeah, I mean, it's like, correct. What happened there? Yeah. Like, he's so associated
wasn't
with
he
Tarantino, but
I could have sworn he was in a third one. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's he makes such an impression.
They wrote 4 rooms for him. Yeah, so there wasn't a falling out or anything, and he's certainly in Robert Rodriguez films going forward. And they wrote a role for him in Sin City too. They wrote the Yellow Bastard. They came to him and he's like, "Hey, we want you to play this guy," and he was like, "I kind of don't want to do that anymore. Thank you." That's the pedophile murderer who. Well, he's covered in putty makeup and he's yellow, and I think he can only get an erection if he's torturing women. Tarantino, Rodriguez was like, "Yeah, perfect role for you," and he was like, "I have kids now, thank you."
Well, we kind of talked about this with Tom Noonan and Manhunter and Ted Levine and turning down Waingro and Heat because he'd already done his serial killer thing. And like, if you're a character actor who looks a certain way, you have to be careful how much of that you do, because the typecasting is coming for you hard.
I think Con Air is probably the big one for Buscemi to really lean into that, right? I mean, he did it numerous times, of course, played sleazebags and murderers and stuff. Fast-talking criminals, of course, but the really gross ones, he tended to not want to do those.
Con Air feels like the time where it's like, he probably didn't want to do it, but they just put so much on the check that he said, "Okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and do this. Why not?" It's that I get that sense at least, and then they, obviously it was such a windfall for him. He was very eager to sign on for Armageddon right after that.
Yeah, he's in the Bay stable as well, kind of.
There you go.
Because of he's just part of that crew, I suppose. Worked with all those guys.
and Adam Sandler. I don't know if we mentioned that, but yeah,
Yep.
it seems like maybe Con Air and the Sandler joints are similar in that, like, it just seems like they're also kind of fun sets to be on for actors. Maybe that
Con Air
is part
seems
of the
like a
lore.
fun set for sure. No question about that. His role, though, like, was it Garland Green, the Marietta Mangler? He comes out like Hannibal Lecter. You know, this is sort of an iconic, stupid thing in a 90s action movie. It almost feels like a satire of that role. But they play it straight. There is that sequence in the middle where they're cross-cutting action scenes, like the end of Phantom Menace, and one of the action scenes is Buscemi potentially about to murder a child as he plays Tea Party with her. And it's just the rising tension of, is Buscemi going to murder this kid? And with no
the answer is no. He's actually kind of a cuddly serial killer.
That's where the audience
it's uplifting.
begins to really like him in that movie, because you're like, oh, he's not so bad. He didn't murder that child. And so then you get the big reveal at the end of him at the craps table, and it's like, that's what a great moment for the audience. Everyone loves him, and everyone's happy that he's gambling that night.
You could not do that with many actors, I think. Like I don't think you could do the pedophile serial killer gets away and it's an audience applause moment with almost anyone else, really. But
that is such a crazy reach that movie goes for, to do the like Hannibal at the end of Silence of the Lambs ending, but as a comedy beat.
Yep,
it's
kind of the movie in a nutshell, really. Yeah.
Okay, but we're all raging all over the place.
Jumping in. We missed a whole decade of types that he played here. Yeah,
but it's interesting. You know, you mentioned that he's no stranger to playing sleazebags, murderers, and everything. But one of the things we're touching on here between Reservoir Dogs, Con Air, all this, he plays a lot of villainous types, sleazy types, but he's never the worst person in the movie.
I mean, he's done it. It's few and far between. It's not really his thing. It's not really memorable when he does. I think you're getting to the main thing there, which is, for whatever reason, this guy has just an incredible amount of audience sympathy built in. And I don't know if it's just accrued over time because he's beloved character actor Steve Buscemi, but I think it's there in Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, yeah.
I think,
that's it. Well, Reservoir Dogs and Con Air especially, like, these are characters that we should not have any great affection for, and yet you kind of come out liking them best of anybody in the movie almost. Maybe not so much Con Air's, but Reservoir Dogs, he kind of steals the sympathy away from the more like
the guys with the classic arcs.
Better than Harvey Keitel or Tim Roth. It's crazy, and it's just great.
Like
there's just a lovability.
He's very
about him somehow.
odd looking, but I don't really think of him as evil looking. He's just, odd looking. I don't really think of like, oh, he's somebody that's going to hack up everybody and, bury their body parts all over the backyard. He just is just kind of odd looking. And so it's like, I don't think he's really made. Yeah.
Just kind of funny looking.
Exactly. And so it's,
it's a non-threatening way of being ugly. He's not nasty looking. He doesn't.
The ugly thing. Let's dip into this now, because I mean, this has sort of been a thing his whole career, that he is, a famous ugly person. He's famous for being ugly. I think that is, it's certainly he plays ugly characters that are narratively unattractive or gross looking. Sometimes because it is a reflection of who they are inside. Occasionally, when he plays villains, but also sympathetically ugly characters, such as Ghost World, of course, being the sort of most prominent one. But he's played those sort of sad sack losers a lot. Trees Lounge, the film, his directing premiere, does that. But I don't think he's actually. I think he's just a normal looking guy, right? He just looks distinctive. He just looks like somebody you can see.
I think he's pretty ugly. He's asymmetrical. He's got weird teeth. Is never. I don't know if it's a professional choice to never have a haircut that seems to work for him, or if just got a hairline that is messed up. Look, I love the guy. He's fantastically talented, but I don't think he's just like ugly by Hollywood standards. I think he's you would notice him in the bar, sort of weird looking.
He's weird looking. He's definitely weird looking. He is distinctive looking. I mean, we've I think we've talked about this before. Is that a big part of celebrity is just having a face that people recognize and remember, a famous face, and man, not many people look like him. You know,
Yes.
he has character all over his face, and that there's a pejorative way of saying that, but it has given him a 50-year career in the industry as well.
Well, I don't think it's just that he looks interesting. There's something about this too. When I was watching Living in Oblivion a
good
week
one.
or two back,
Yeah,
and I was struck by how there's something that both that the leads there are Steve Buscemi and Catherine Keener, and they both have this quality I think about them that sounds like it should be like a general movie star quality, which is that it's interesting to watch them think. And that is actually not so much a big movie star thing. Like, I mean, you could use it to draw a line between, and that movie also has Dermot Mulroney in it, who's an actor that does with leading man looks, who does not have that quality. There's his alter ego, Dylan McDermott, does not have that quality. Sam Worthington does not have that quality. Any of the whatever Jai Courtney, whoever you want to throw at as the bland, undistinguished leading men. But actually, I think there's something about this, that movie star leading man quality, that is not necessarily what it is. Because I don't think Tom Cruise has that necessarily either. It's interesting to watch Tom Cruise act and move through the world, but not necessarily to sit and contemplate.
I mean, I think Tom Cruise could think. I think he can do it. It's not what I associate with him, though.
Better people, better actors can do better versions of it. But I'm saying there's a thing that allows this is a thing character actors do that allows them to sort of straddle and become leading men in certain types of movies, at least. And I think of other character actors, non-traditional handsome types. But James Gandolfini, excellent at this. Philip Seymour Hoffman, amazing at this. Hoffman and Buscemi both have a capacity, and Gandolfini too, of not just making contemplating interesting, but they can also make their character just thinking, reacting funny in itself, a comedy beat. Just watching their eyes roll or bulge or take a moment. And that is, it's rare. It sounds so simple, and when I say it like that, but it is kind of a rare thing. And I think it's what allows him to rise above the field in a way.
Well, I mean, it's just an excellent, skill for an actor to have in their tool set, obviously, and you're right. That's a good example of that for that film too, Living in Oblivion. Which, speaking of that film, there was a brief period where he was not the ugly guy or the character actor guy with the interesting face. He was kind of a young man who represented Gen X a little bit, Airheads. Living in Oblivion. There weren't too many of them, but he got to play kind of the avatar for Gen X for a minute in the 90s, which is, funny because he's a boomer, but all the same, that was kind of where he first got purchased. And a lot of those indie films that he did early on, I think he's supposed to be attractive, right? I think he certainly is in Airheads, right? He is, or at least charismatic and kind of.
Well, he's supposed to be attractive in that he's a rock musician, and it's like, what if you're a rock musician and you can somehow gain some success, it doesn't really matter what you look like, you're just going to be an attractive rock star.
No, but I think you're wrong about this, Reed, because both those movies. He's not the attractive one in Airheads. He's the bass player. He is the third most handsome of the three Lone Rangers.
By a lot. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Adam Sandler is the good-looking one that all the women immediately flock to, by contrast to him. And Living in Oblivion, there's the not James LeGros character that he's specifically being cucked by, and it is that he's the less attractive one. There's an attractive counterpart to him in both those films.
Well, yeah,
but that's what makes Ghost World such a ridiculous, almost nerd fantasy, in that he's the loser who suddenly now has not only the interest of this 18-year-old girl who appreciates all of his kooky little hobbies and collections, but then he even gets in a relationship where he's even too busy for the 18-year-old who's all into him. It's like the ultimate power fantasy for Buscemi.
He's pulling all kinds of tail.
Oh yeah,
in that movie.
It's also him leaning into
I mean-
being a big dork who's weird looking too, though.
Big
Ghost World,
time.
he's
Yeah,
sort
I mean,
of-
Yeah.
well, and then the scene where he's in he's got his little tiny little shoebox car, and he gets kind of run off the road by the other car, and he just completely freaks out, and Thora Birch and Scarlett Johansson are seeing the whole thing, and so yeah, I mean they totally set him up to be like the ultimate nerd loser, but then the movie's just, I mean, obviously it's not really based in any kind of reality, it's based on a comic book, but it's just so absurd how suddenly he's just got women falling all over him.
That was like the only time he ever got Oscar buzz was Ghost World. In this massive career where everyone loves him, he's never been even in the conversation except for one time for Ghost World, which is so crazy to me.
I am amazed he didn't get nominated for Fargo.
I think because Fargo, it was William H. Macy just kind of took all of the support.
Yeah, he kind of stole the thunder,
which you can argue
because he submitted a support.
Well, I think H. Macy, he was up for best supporting.
He was nominated.
Yeah.
Macy was nominated.
So it's like it's almost like whoever was in charge for their campaign basically said, "Well, we're going to go with Macy, and sorry, Steve, you're on your own for this one." But yeah, I mean that's probably the movie that, just off the top of my head, I would think would have been the closest he could have gotten to an Oscar nomination.
Yeah, and I mean even the other things like that, you're not nominating him for Big Lebowski.
No.
Like it's and there's other good stuff that there's worthy performances. Most recently, I would say Death of Stalin is the sort of thing that could get a push, but even that he's kind of getting upstaged. He's doing kind of what's the phrase? The euphemistic phrase, sort of generous work, being really considerate to his other actors in there and letting other people shine.
Well, Death of Stalin is another incredible example of he's playing Nikita Khrushchev, and plotting to I mean, he's been complicit in all kinds of crimes against humanity and has continued plotting to be, and yet Beria is also in that movie, and so Khrushchev is the cuddly nice one that you had, I'm rooting for, and I want to win.
Yeah,
get that bad guy, Khrushchev.
So
yeah, I don't know. Are we trying to go through this chronologically?
I think it's impossible to do him chronologically. It's just because
we're bouncing
one
around.
movie is going to lead to another, and that's the beauty of Buscemi.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we could talk about his work with different filmmakers.
That makes sense.
I mean, we could talk about the Tarantino stuff or the Coens first.
Well, the Coens, I mean, I think, like we can get to Fargo, which is sort of a watershed moment, right? That's sort of fun. He's at peak cultural ubiquity. It's kind of the role, I think, that defines his career the most, if any one role does. I think Fargo might be his greatest role, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's that and Reservoir Dogs, I think, are the two. I mean, I think he's great in some of the other movies we mentioned, in Trees Lounge, Living in Oblivion. Those just don't have nearly the cultural impact of Fargo or Reservoir Dogs. And I wouldn't put them above.
No. What do you think of Living in Oblivion? I really like that one.
It's one of my favorite movies about making movies, which is a topic that I generally do not.
It's funny. It's got.
I would say watching it again fairly recently. Maybe it's just my own appetite for kind of 90s indie quirk is not what it was back in the 90s. That that movie just kind of tired me out. It just gets to be, they just hammer home the whole thing of, it's so difficult to make an independent movie. Everything's going to go wrong. And it's like, okay, they do that. It's good in the first 20 minutes. And then they kind of do it all again with everything towards the end with Dinklage. And I don't know, it just wore me out. Even though it's not a very long movie, I just feel like the first half hour told me what I needed to know, and everything after it I just wasn't into.
I can see that. It peaks a little in that opening, but
I mean, I like how it's playing with perspectives, and it's sort of presenting, there's like 3 segments to it that are all kind of filtered through different people's points of view. And I think, you get a nice the shift of bringing in LeGros in the second one and Dinklage for the third one gives them different energies, and just generally that it's so not reverent about the process of filmmaking or the craft of it or whatever. I mean, even as it's showcasing some pretty incredible craftsmanship from especially like Catherine Keener and LeGros too, I would say, doing some of the hardest type of acting, which is playing an actor acting and giving performances that have layers and are suddenly like multiple takes where they're a little different each time, and showing different things going on under the surface. That's the one of the biggest high wire acts I think there is. And I don't know.
It does capture a time and a place for me in a big way.
Yeah.
Like this is like a satire of 90s independent filmmaking specifically. And it brings me back when I see some of that. There's little moments there that, that it refuses to be, conventional most of the time. And I like that a lot. Like they never like really make Buscemi likable per se. I love that they're all having fantasy sequences at the end of what they imagine the result of the film they're making to be. And he has a fantasy about winning an Oscar for it. And he gets on stage and to deliver a speech, and it's just a list of grievances. And that's really great. That's really fun.
He wins a special Oscar for greatest film ever made, ever. Which is great. That's what I mean about it. It's not reverent or it's meta. It's very meta, but it's not up its own ass in the way that meta things about the movie industry tend to be, and how that rubs me wrong, so wrong. But there's not really any geniuses to be found in that movie, which is kind of a lovely thing when it comes to Hollywood movies about Hollywood or about movies.
Yeah, that was a moment in time where we had a little less romanticized ideas about that. I don't know. I remember they made stuff like State and Maine, or that were kind of a little more pointed. And the Player,
was just thinking the Player. Even Bowfinger.
Poisonous Hollywood satires. Yeah, Bowfinger might be sort of the end of that wave, and now we're kind of back to La La Land and such. When we do movies of that type.
I haven't seen. I haven't seen State and Maine, and I have not seen The Player in quite some time. But what I recall about that is that even The Player, for as much as it is sort of negative in its depiction of the industry, it's also still kind of grandiose in there's like conspiracy elements and whatnot. And
it's a thriller. Yeah. I mean, there's an element of that.
It's just Living Oblivion presents it as so grubby and just like this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's big studios in The Player, and Living in Oblivion is very clearly, if they get distribution at all, they're lucky kind of thing. And I mean, it's, I don't know. We were kind of reflexive in the 90s about filmmaking. There was a lot of them.
Well, there were more even like as a documentary, American movie. I mean, that's almost kind of like that's
right. Same era.
Also, I think that's almost like the real version of Living in Oblivion to some degree.
Buscemi could have played any of those guys too.
He would have been good either one, really.
You know what's weird? Buscemi, correct me if I'm wrong, has not done much horror.
For a career as big and humongous as his, he's very rarely. I mean, he's
ranged. It feels like he's ranged so widely overall.
Most of it would be stuff that he did when he was young and didn't have a name. Tales from the Dark Side. I mentioned he's did a Tales from the Crypt as well. A really gross one actually, where him and Roger Daltrey are dueling photojournalists, and their skin melts off. It's pretty. It's a Tales from the Crypt episode. Let's see, what else have I got on here that's actually a horror film. The Gray Zone is a Holocaust drama. It's pretty horrific, but that does not count.
No. I don't think.
Let's see. The Dead Don't Die. One of his most recent things. The Jim Jarmusch
that's
zombie.
That's not a horror movie. It's a zombie movie. But
he's in Hubie Halloween with Adam Sandler. No, he doesn't do horror.
I mean,
Monster House.
I wonder-
Monster House. There you go.
Well, Monsters Inc.
I think maybe part of this,
And Monsters Inc. He's a monster in it.
Yeah.
I think maybe you it's hard to put him in horror for kind of the same reason why, like, when you put somebody really famous as the only, like, one of the only famous people in a horror movie, it's kind of obvious the moment they're introduced in the first act, like, well, that must be the killer. Otherwise, why would that actor be slumming it? When you see some, even before you knew who Buscemi was, once you saw his face, it's so distinctive and memorable in an instant that you're kind of like, well, I'm going to remember that guy. Like, you can't.
That's true.
You can't possibly spring the surprise that Buscemi is the killer.
Like, he hasn't really done a lot of, even horror or wherever, where he's just a straight up bad guy. Usually, if he's, an awful criminal, there is kind of a humorous element to it, like Fargo. It's not really played.
Con Air.
Yeah, exactly. So I or like he's kind of the low life in Desperado, that great opening scene. So he's just not really. I think maybe people like him more as a humorous bad guy, like the great scene in Billy Madison, where he's the loser who crosses Billy's name off of his people to kill list. It's like, it's funny because he's very comedic, and it's like, yeah, that's hilarious. I don't think we would really want to see a movie where he is straight up that kind of a guy. I don't know if he would pull that off as well.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. There's always a bigger villain, even when he's playing a bad guy, whether it's Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs or Beria in Death of Stalin or Malkovich in Con Air. He's never the one we're really rooting against.
I'm looking here, and I'm aside from cartoons, which he's done a lot of and often plays the bad guy in. The only thing I can find where he's the actual main villain is Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, which is a bad film no one really much talks about.
I like him there. Mr. Shush. He's the hit.
Yeah, you could make the argument that Walken is the main villain too.
But it's like, they bring in Buscemi basically to be the hitman to kill off all of. But again, he's killing off a bunch of criminals, even though they're kind of the quote unquote good guy criminals. That's still what he's doing. So, but I do like him in that movie. I mean, he doesn't really say much in it, but he is effective there.
When's he bad? Like, when is he ever less than solid?
Never once.
I don't think it's ever happened. Yeah. It's a plus up in anything you put him in for the most part. I mean, I guess you could miscast him. That doesn't happen too often, but short of that, like, he's always a benefit. He's going to take a role like Rockhound in Armageddon and elevate it somehow and make that character way more than it would be on the page. And part of that is obviously just our relationship with Steve Buscemi, the actor. We all like him, so it's nice to see him pop up in something. And that kind of role is perfect for using his ability, but he will make the stupidest sounding lines funny. he just will, and he will create empathy when he's playing, Rockhound, the porn addicted geologist in Armageddon, of course.
He'll be my favorite part of Escape from LA.
Oh, Map to the Stars, Eddie, of course, yes,
of course. A movie that I would probably hate fairly intently if it weren't for him. Without that, I just don't know if there's anything for me there to really.
I kind of like that when we did that last year. I was kind of like, this is all right, actually.
It's Cliff Robertson and a whole lot of nothing in that movie.
Yeah, if you want to hear me defend Escape from LA, that is a past episode. You can hear 1 hour on me talking about how much I liked it, which is kind of.
I was going to say, I don't really recall that being how that went, but maybe you were less negative than I was. But look, there's a ton for us to be positive about.
Oh,
mostly positive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly so.
Yeah. I'm not going to say a single bad thing about him, I guess, now that we're past the ugly conversation.
Do you like dramatic Buscemi or comedic Buscemi?
Well, I think his best roles are the comic relief in dramas for the most part, or thrillers.
Yeah, definitely comedic. That's a good call. Obviously, I mean, he had Boardwalk Empire, where he's the lead, very dramatic role, not much call for.
He's got to be serious.
Not much call for comedy from him, and I thought he was very good there, and I have no real issues with him there. I think that show just committed the crime of only being good. which was like, a lot of people are like, it's just good. That's there's nothing more to it. But yeah, in general, I like him much more as kind of the comedic presence in the drama.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Boardwalk Empire for a bit then, because that's his biggest foray into leading man stuff. I would say, right? I mean, like he is the star of that show. He is the center of that show. Like he's the opening credits is his character standing on the beach. Nobody else is. You don't see anybody else in it. Like, and yeah, you're right. It's kind of one of the forgotten prestige shows because it lives in the shadow of The Sopranos, certainly, and some other stuff. He is always really good in it. It's kind of a curse, though, that he never gets to be the most interesting character on his own show. It's one of those situations where the main character kind of just is stuck in this straight man role where he has got to kind of be reactive and passive a lot of the time, and a lot of the more colorful sides characters get to do all the most memorable stuff from the different seasons.
Yeah, it's a tough role. I think that it does kind of point to maybe his limitations in a lead role. It's very hard. I mean, with the characters written, I don't even think they wanted to do this, but it struggles because Nucky is just not particularly charismatic. He's certainly not a badass. He's smart, but not that smart. There's not an enormous amount of pleasure in seeing him operate because his strength, his superpower is sort of fastidiousness and professionalism. For the most part.
Like, I mean, he's not a full-blown Michael Mann character, but you're right. That's the problem. He's sort of a jack of several trades. And he's not, I mean, he is charismatic in the way that is supposed to be a thing, that he is a good schmoozer in the room. He's a politician in that 1920s mold of, he'll smoke the cigar with you and pour you drinks and tell you corny jokes. But he's not magnetic in the way that Gandolfini is on The Sopranos. Right. You understand how Tony draws people into him just through force of personality. And you're right. And I think Nucky is not supposed to be a pushover. He's not supposed to be a wilting flower, but he's not the most badass, intimidating person on the show. And he is sort of fastidious and kind of like a good calculating tactician, but not like Arnold Rothstein.
No.
Which is doing that. So everybody on the show, every one of his characteristics is being done in a bigger, showier way by somebody else on the show.
Well, it's like a lot of the
Arnold Rothstein would have been a solid lead for that show. Actually, I mean, that's a terrific Michael Stuhlbarg performance. Well, it's fun to be around. And a
lot of the supporting performances, they almost seem like they could have been played by Steve Buscemi, and it would have been more what we think of Steve Buscemi playing, and not so much being the lead of the show. Because, like you said, it's just he's the anchor, but he's never really allowed to do what we like from Steve Buscemi. And maybe that's why he took the role, is because it is a very different sort of character for him, and he's good. It's just I can't really think of a lot of moments that I would be like, oh man, I remember when Buscemi did this on Boardwalk Empire. There's just not a lot of that. It's like I can probably think of.
He has those moments. Well, they don't land that hard.
I mean, I could probably think of a dozen moments from him in just his one season on Sopranos, and be like, oh, what a great scene, what a great moment. Oh my gosh, everything's fantastic. And I feel like I can't do that so much with Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah. And on the one hand, it's not entirely fair because everybody's best, everybody who's on The Sopranos is doing the best work of their career. Yeah. Nobody ever gets better roles than they do on The Sopranos.
So maybe Buscemi.
And
although Tony Blundetto is really good.
Buscemi, that's one of his best roles.
Way up there. I've said it before, but that's my favorite season of the show, and he's a big reason why. I think he's just, his whole arc is fantastic.
And to Chris's point, Tony Blundetto is a better character than Nucky Thompson.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the weird thing about Boardwalk Empire, which is, a show that always kind of lost me in the middle of its seasons and then ended really strong. So it always kept me on the hook till the end because it always pulled it out in the end. But you're right. The big memorable moments from those season finales, not a lot of them are Nucky moments. Mm-mm. It's stuff with other characters. And that is this weird thing where it creates that situation that it is a Steve Buscemi vehicle. There's not many of those outside
No.
Living in Oblivion and Trees Lounge, which he kind of like has to write for himself. But there's a character written for him specifically, and it is a leading role on one of the most expensive prestige television shows of all time, and yet it's not one of his most memorable roles. And it's kind of a thankless role, despite being, I'm sure, very well paying and very prominent.
So
he got some of his only mainstream award recognition. I think he got like Golden Globe and SAG awards for that.
Yeah, he got some awards for that. And appropriately. I mean, it's a guy who deserves some awards, for God's sakes. But
probably got an Emmy nomination or two in there.
Yeah, I don't think he actually won though.
I don't think we would say he should have.
No, I wouldn't.
So, is he miscast then in Boardwalk Empire, or is that role just not going to? Is no one going to nail that?
He's not miscast. It's just not what we're used to from him, and it's like I think he did a perfectly good job, and there's probably about a dozen other actors I can think of who might have been more suited for it, but I mean I'm kind of glad that he did it just to kind of show that he could play that kind of a leading man role. So good for him on that. I mean, to me, coming off of all of his movies and being on The Sopranos, I was, super excited for that show, and it was a perfectly good show. I don't have any major complaints with it, but like if I'm gonna bring up, the great shows of the last 20 years, it's probably gonna be a little while till I get to Boardwalk Empire.
Maybe De Niro? I feel like what we were just describing is De Niro in Casino, and that's an excellent performance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of the same thing. I mean, I think maybe there is better casting, but then you kind of need to write the character to an actor's more particular strengths. That
they never really quite located that for Nucky, I feel like. They never quite found the essential Steve Buscemi-ness of that character.
Right. He's sort of the character becomes sort of an anchor amongst all these bigger personalities. And that is something that any actor is going to struggle with. Now, maybe there's somebody, Bobby Cannavale played a villain one season.
Yeah.
You put him in there and you naturally start writing Nucky as, oh no, his superpower is more that he's this big gregarious personality that draws people in. And and Nucky as a character becomes more defined in a certain way.
Well, I think, but Cannavale is a similar actor, though. I think he is a character actor too. Like I don't think that if you put him at the center of the thing, he's as effective. His show Vinyl on HBO, the other Martin Scorsese produced hour-long drama but that one didn't even last. Though. That was one season and done.
That was a bust.
Yeah, and he was similarly kind of just he didn't quite hold the thing. I mean, I think Buscemi's Nucky is more successful than whoever Cannavale played in Vinyl, but the
show was more successful,
right? Everything about
it for 4 more
successful.
seasons,
it's tough, I guess. Is the point that putting a leading, putting a character actor in a leading role like that, it's not without its challenges. And I mean, I would have to say that it was successful in Boardwalk Empire. As we've said, it didn't really miss to put a wrong foot anywhere. But it's no one's favorite.
Its only crime is being merely good, and that's all we can really say. I mean, it got real wonky when they killed off Michael Pitt, and you have these scenes with Gretchen Mol, and it's just I didn't know what was really going on with a lot of that stuff as in the later seasons. I think
the show improved with Pitt gone. Personally,
oh okay, I liked him on there. Yeah.
I think it got better in parts and worse in parts. One of the worst parts is they kept Gretchen Mol around for several more seasons, even though her role on the show was that she was Michael Pitt's mom.
Yeah, there was nothing for her to do.
Mm-hmm. And they made a real effort. I mean, I watched the pilot of Boardwalk Empire and all the season finales over the last month, just to try and refresh myself. And they made some pretty valiant efforts to keep her involved and have her have a relationship with Buscemi.
Well, she hit early on that show. She was a character that people cared about.
Oh, she was good.
Yeah,
early.
They were also
but characters can outlive their usefulness.
There were weird choices that I was like, well, why'd you write Dabney Coleman off? They were doing that a lot, stuff like that on that show. I mean, I really did appreciate just how that show looked. The
It did.
recreation
It
of Atlantic
looked
City was
fantastic.
fantastic. Yeah,
Mm.
it's one of those where I'm just like, why didn't I like this more? Why was I more engaged with this thing? And I never quite nailed that down. I almost want to rewatch it and to answer that question, but then again, I just wasn't that into it. So
I think maybe we were hoping that it would be okay, Goodfellas or Sopranos set way back, and it just wasn't really. It wasn't, and that really wasn't. It wasn't the goal of the show. Really wasn't to be that. And when I think when people started to realize that was not what the show was, it just maybe fell out of favor a little bit, despite being genuinely good.
Well, I think it was trying to give audiences what they claimed that they wanted from The Sopranos more, or thought they wanted from The Sopranos more, which is more straightforward gangster stuff.
Yes.
But with this sort of same level of craft behind it. And it turns out that all the personal stuff, the more comedic stuff, the esoteric, idiosyncratic stuff of The Sopranos was really central to what made that show stick with people. And Boardwalk Empire does a gang war every year. That's a very well executed gang war, which is what everybody was always jonesing for on Sopranos, and yet everybody forgot about it 2 years after it aired.
That is interesting. Huh. Yeah. How about that?
But anyway, that's enough. I think that's probably enough Boardwalk Empire for now. There's a lot of other movies and stuff this guy's been in.
Yeah. His comedy career, huge.
Yeah. He is great on 30 Rock. Doing just playing into the hey, I'm a weirdo vibe that he can bring so effortlessly, and then he carries that over to the Mirror Horror Show, which you guys have not seen, of course. But
he exists very comfortably in the Tina Fey sort of verse or whatever her shows. He's great on Kimmy Schmidt too. He's got that. He's got a fantastic meme from 30 Rock. The how you doing, fellow kids, or whatever. That's great.
Right. That just not to harp on the ugliness. That would not work nearly as good with another face.
There is a 7-minute Mr. Show sketch with that exact premise. That is that. I mean, it's Mr. Show at its height, and it's funny. But the entire thing is accomplished in 4 seconds of Steve Buscemi doing that one thing.
And it's so much funnier because it's not just here is an obviously 53-year-old man dressed in like, I don't know, a high C commercial, like 90s commercial kid gear. It's not just here's a middle-aged man. It's that here is character actor Steve Buscemi. They're noticeably him. You expect the kids to be like, you're Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, he's great in those.
He's hilarious in Trees Lounge. I think he's very funny in that movie. I mean, that's one of those ultimate indie barfly loser movies, and it's really good at that. And he's funny in that.
But that's a comedy that is distinctly not hilarious to me. Yes, I agree with classifying it as a comedy. It's got more chuckles than it does big laughs.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, you're not doubling over, but there's to me. I mean, there's a lot of stuff where I'm constantly amused, and I'll take that in a comedy if you can just kind of keep me chuckling for the whole time. And I mean, I think he's perfect in that part. That's the kind of comedic part. If he's going to be a leading man, that's exactly the kind of comedic part he should be playing as. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's because that's a movie that was made in 1993. I want to say.
A little after.
Came out in 96.
He had more clout. Yeah.
96. Okay, but this is my point: is that I had to double check that it didn't come out in 1978.
Yeah.
Like that is a movie that was released in 1996 that feels straight out of the 70s, and that's a time when a sort of low key movie about a barfly played by a character actor like Steve Buscemi could be. Maybe not a mainstream hit, but a mainstream release.
Well, that was kind of. Well, I mean, this is. Let's get into his directing career. I mean, he's more of a journeyman for the most part. Except when Trees Lounge came out, I think that there was maybe a bit of a sense that he might actually be a secret auteur. He might actually have the ability to have a real directing career with something to say. I don't think any of his other feature films hit after that. But then he also did the best episode of The Sopranos and the best episode of 30 Rock as a director. So he's definitely
and
got
a good episode of Homicide.
Yeah, he's works at it. He still does it. He certainly did some Miracle Workers episodes.
I do really like Animal Factory. I think that's that's one of the better prison movies that I've seen. I mean, it's maybe not exactly.
I have not seen that one.
Oh, it's a pretty wild movie. You get Mickey Rourke as a transvestite inmate, and a large portion of the film is Edward Furlong is kind of the new person in prison, learning the ropes and trying to survive on the inside, and kind of the big threat against him is he's constantly trying to escape being raped by Tom Arnold.
Whoa.
That's a big part of that movie is don't be raped by Tom Arnold.
I'm just I'm playing out in my head. This is not a comedy. It's a
prison drama.
Pretty serious movie. Yeah,
there is. Uh-huh. I mean, it's a prison drama, but there is a lot of humor to it. I mean, Mickey Rourke is very funny in it. I mean, it's based on a book that was written by Eddie Bunker, who was Mr. Blue in Reservoir Dogs, and so
yes, of course.
It's just kind of your slice of prison life.
Eddie Bunker, notoriously raped by Tom Arnold.
Well,
just
maybe
imagining those scenes. And, hey, kid, come over here. Get over here, buddy. I got to do something to you.
I mean, it's almost, in a way, it's kind of the serious version of the scene in Dirty Work where Norm is abused in prison.
Oh wow,
it's kind of close to that.
Now, may I ask, is Tom Arnold? Is he playing like a serious character here? Is he putting on like I'm a white supremacist, kind of like he's doing like Kevin James in that movie?
He's just like Vince Vaughn in that boxing movie.
He's very convincing. He is trying to be a scary prison rapist.
Okay,
I mean, that's
so
his goal.
He's not doing like the Tom Arnold persona. He's not doing
Tom Arnold is definitely stretching as an actor in that movie, and I think he pulls it off because you watch him and you're like, oh, I don't want to be in prison with that guy.
Fascinating.
All right. Okay. I think this is enough prison rape in our Steve Buscemi episode.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a good movie. I think it's probably on all the whatever your free streaming platform of choice is. You can watch it,
sure.
And Buscemi has a small part in it, but I liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, what's as if you look at his IMDb director's credits, it is interesting to sort of track his directing career alongside his acting career, because it starts off with Trees Lounge and Homicide, and sort of indie-ish 90s stuff, transitions into doing a couple episodes of Oz and several episodes of Sopranos. So he's started doing some prestige TV stuff in the aughts. And then it becomes a lot of TV comedy. Yeah. He's just directing random episodes of Kimmy Schmidt and 30 Rock and Portlandia.
Portlandia is a good fit for him. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You've seen the leap year episode of 30 Rock, right? It's a wonderful episode of television.
Not since it aired. I haven't got there on my rewatch yet, but I have gotten to his first appearance as the private investigator.
Have you seen that one?
He's just marvelously odd.
Well, yes.
He's just carrying an open can of Diet Coke around in his suit jacket breast pocket and picking up a cigar butt that Alec Baldwin threw away and popping it in his mouth to I don't know. I guess he's trying to look cool somehow. It's just this really odd beats that he brings to it that you've always wondered, could you even put that in the script, or did somebody just give him odd business on the day?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's a good physical comedian too. He can always pull that shit off. Have you seen the Leap Day William episode, Chris?
I watched 30 Rock, but boy, not a lot of it that springs to mind from it.
The premise is that there's this entire elaborate mythology about leap year that just exists in the 30 Rock universe, where there's a man in a straw hat with a white mustache comes out of the sea and gives candy to weeping children on leap day. It's wild. And everyone is celebrating it in the world of 30 Rock. And they're also watching on television a Jim Carrey movie about a man who turns into Leap Day Williams.
Isn't it like it's a James L. Brooks movie? Like after he did like Valentine's Day and Mother's Day or something.
It's like a liar high premise comedy, and he's like growing gills on his neck, and at the end he's like, "I learned the lesson of Leap Day. Oh my god, I love my family." It's fantastic. I think Andie MacDowell is his wife in the movie. It's perfect.
God, that is. God, that's perfect.
And that's a Steve Buscemi directed joint. He's a journeyman, but he's really good. And then, of course, Pine Barrens. I don't know. I think I called it the best Sopranos episode a little glibly earlier, but it's a good candidate for that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's the best, but it's the most popular.
It's the one that gets referenced the most.
So you mentioned this thing about him being a journeyman and how it seemed like maybe he would be an auteur. Are there really many examples of actors turned directors that become auteurs? There's Clint Eastwood.
Bradley Cooper's making a run at it. That's for sure.
He's trying.
Bradley Cooper certainly is trying, but I'm
Costner.
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 Yeah, Costner's a bit of one. Yeah, okay.
Sophia Coppola.
I mean, Clooney made one.
Well, sure.
An actress turned auteur.
She's an actor.
Yeah.
She's, I'd say, actress reformed into auteur, but.
Clooney had all the opportunity. He just Clooney technically did do that. He just needed to make better movies, I think, was the problem with Clooney. He just wasn't a very good director.
Here's a half-baked theory I'm going to throw out there, though. Perhaps the thing that kept Buscemi from being an auteur is he lacks the fundamental ego necessary.
That could be.
To do that thing.
That could be.
And maybe part of that is because he's been an on-screen performer for too long with a very weird, distinctive face that is certainly constantly forcing him to confront humbling facts about superficiality and how people view him and all that.
Well, yeah. You remember Buscemi Eyes? Another meme he's been associated with?
I do not know that one.
It was just pictures of famous people where you replaced their eyes with Steve Buscemi's and sort of the wrinkles around them. And they would become very creepy looking. And apparently he was not a fan of this, actually. But it was quite popular in the aughts at some point. Poor guy.
Yeah, I know. He's had a real uphill battle against our cultural superficiality to become America's favorite uncle.
Or has it benefited him in ways we can't even quantify, though?
Yeah. We want him to be our creepy uncle instinctively, and yet he's not. We love the guy.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's another thing. Like, you see all these people he continues to work with over and over and over again. You've never heard a bad story about Steve Buscemi. He must be a delightful guy. I think everyone loves this guy in person too, because in 50 years, never been any drama, never been any bad stories in the press. You've never heard a single bad thing about him. Everyone just brings him back over and over and over again. Yeah.
The secret story that bubbles up about him is that he's a secret hero of 9/11.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Right. Volunteer fireman. Uh-huh.
Not a hypothetical one like Mark Wahlberg. But in terms of he actually went out and helped people on 9/11. Yeah, that's crazy.
And in the ensuing months, he was like working in Lower Manhattan for like the rest of the year after that went down.
So here,
and it genuinely seems like he is like his people have never pushed that. He's never tried to like dine out on that anyway.
Yeah.
Well, even like Jon Stewart is sort of the champion of first responders.
He gets a lot more credit for it. He sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of 9/11. As big a fan of Steve Buscemi as all of us are, have any of us seen King of Staten Island?
Have any of us seen him in 9/11 in the same place? No. No, I've not seen King of Staten Island because as big of a fan of Steve Buscemi as I am equally not a fan of Pete Davidson.
That's what I was going to say, is that the power of Buscemi was not strong enough to get any of us to watch a Pete Davidson movie directed by Judd Apatow.
That's the thing. Well,
it says something.
Apatow too. Yeah. Well, look. I mean, the guy's got 180 films. I mean, how many have I seen? Less than half, I think.
Probably. Yeah.
Works a lot. That guy.
Yeah. But even as his biggest fan, none of us watched any of these things because Steve Buscemi was in them. like Boardwalk Empire may be closest of all, but also that was like it's HBO, it's prestige, it's gangster stuff from one of the writers of Sopranos. Like there's other pulls there. He's never the above the line pull. You know?
Yeah,
I mean, I guess I watched Trees Lounge because it was Steve Buscemi's movie.
Right.
That's the essential.
That is a
That's
good
the
one, by the
only
way. I still, that one's just our kind of thing, man. That cast, Mark Boone Jr., young, almost unrecognizably thin Mark Boone Jr.,
young, strapping,
Long Island Bukowski. It's a good time. Trees Lounge.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, apparently he had
right there with Goodfellas and Copland for the most Sopranos people in a movie. It's right there with those.
Oh yeah, it's definitely has the same casting director as
Yes.
The Sopranos, I believe.
Yes,
I was thinking it's Sheila Jaffe, I think is her name. But yeah, you definitely were watching like, oh, that's Carmela's mom.
Yes,
there's
right.
D'Angelo Barksdale and Samuel L. Jackson.
there's Michael Imperioli for 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
There's Dr. Melfi's sister.
Yes.
So he was kind of like, I mean, he's New York based, at least has been for some time, So I assume that all these guys kind of just know each other and work together all the time, like that this is, certainly the Sopranos crew. But Trees Lounge is before that.
Yeah.
Right? Trees Lounge is a little before that. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, but
the whole
I think
industry
Sopranos probably goes into development pretty soon after that.
Yeah.
Because it came out in 96, and I think they filmed the pilot for Sopranos in 98, and I think that's why there's so many people, because like you mentioned, it is the same casting people that worked on Trees Lounge, worked on Sopranos, and it just all kind of worked out that way. I mean, that's one of the fun aspects of watching that movie, at least to me, is just seeing all these people just pop up randomly.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the 90s, so Kevin Corrigan's in there. You're doing an indie thing. He's in Living in Oblivion too.
How did Kevin Corrigan never get on Sopranos? Like that just seems like I don't remember.
He must have been.
That does.
He must have been on Sopranos.
I can't think of any time that he was ever on Sopranos. Like it seems like impossible.
No, he was not.
Was he on a different show or something at that time?
He was in the Departed.
He was in the Departed. Yeah,
he's in Goodfellas. He should have been in Sopranos.
It seems crazy to me that he never ended up on Sopranos.
Yeah,
that's weird.
Kevin Corrigan is almost like if you made Steve Buscemi kind of normal looking.
Kind of, yeah.
Then that's kind of what you get, and it's not.
And his lower profile is probably partly because of that.
Exactly,
he's just a little too normal looking. Yeah. That's a good point. Okay.
All right. Well,
so
what have we missed?
Well,
we talked about Reservoir Dogs.
Well,
we talked about Boardwalk Empire. We talked about prison rape and 9/11.
Animal Factory.
We have talked about. Yes.
Well, who do you think is his most frequent collaborator?
Well, it got to be Adam Sandler.
It's Adam Sandler,
yes,
right? Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, listen to this list. These are the films he's made with Sandler. Airheads, Billy Madison, Wedding Singer, Big Daddy, Mr. Deeds, I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, Hotel Transylvania 1 through 3.
Ooh.
He's also in 4, but Sandler doesn't come back for that one. He's in Grown Ups 1 and 2, The Cobbler, The Ridiculous Six, QB Halloween.
He's worked with Sandler even more than Nick Swardson. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Probably more than David Spade.
Well, let's not go crazy.
Yeah, probably. But that's the thing. He's associated with these different people, with the Sandler crew to a degree. He's sort of with Tarantino, sort of with the Coens, sort of with Michael Bay, I guess. And yet, I guess with Tarantino and the Coens, there's like one movie each where he's got a big prominent role.
Yeah.
Right.
Not the lead ever. But, with Reservoir Dogs and Fargo are the big ones. But even when he works with people repeatedly, he still takes these these bit parts a lot. That he's a bartender, the elevator guy in the Coen movies. He's a waiter in Pulp Fiction. He's this very memorable 2-scene role with only 2 lines in Billy Madison.
Yeah.
He's not asking them to write him big showy roles. That's what it seems like.
I mean, that's the thing with the Sandler ones. It's almost all of those are cameos. Almost every single one is you shoot out in a couple days. In some cases, it's a very memorable role, like The Wedding Singer.
The Wedding Singer
one
is super funny. I feel like that maybe doesn't get because there's been so many Sandler movies since then. But yeah, his scene in Wedding Singer is outstanding.
It's my favorite of his Sandler works. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's wonderful in that. And it's kind of a classic Buscemi role too. A drunk, bitter brother at a wedding. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So should we talk at all about when he was making a movie with Vince Vaughn and got stabbed?
Oh, yeah, okay. Domestic Disturbance is the film.
Yeah.
And this is this film is a 90s programmer. It is I watched it because I'd never seen it. No one has. I was a little curious because it's the film he got stabbed in.
Yes.
And it is a hilarious film. It is basically like the ultimate divorced dad feel good wish fulfillment fantasy movie, like way more than Taken, like considerably.
That seems very difficult to top.
Let me give you the premise. John Travolta, divorced dad who builds boats for a living. His ex-wife has a kid. They had a kid together, 10-year-old kid. His ex-wife remarries Vince Vaughn. And the kid witnesses Vince Vaughn murder Steve Buscemi, and no one believes him except his dad. And so he has to protect his kid from the murderer that his careless wife remarried. And ultimately, his refusal to let go of his old relationship is his superpower. And it is what makes him a hero, ultimately, is how divorced he is. And yeah,
that's pretty good. I mean, this from title down to premise, this just sounds like a 90s movie that there would be like a whole episode of Seinfeld as them waiting in line to see this movie.
It feels like a fake movie. It very much feels like a fake movie. Without a joke, like it would be a 30 Rock movie, except there's no goofy premise to it. It's just a
30 Rock movie is goofier than a Seinfeld fake
exactly
movie.
That's perfect.
Buscemi
is good in it. He plays the guy Vince Vaughn kills, so he's out in 40 minutes, but he's like an old criminal associate of Vaughn's who has hunted him down because they had a tontine. Hidden money.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And
the tontine, I did not see that coming.
Yeah, it's a surprise.
So what happened to you? Did Buscemi get stabbed on this set because Vince Vaughn was method acting?
Well,
the actual thing. Yeah. So far more interesting than Domestic Disturbance. They're shooting it in North Carolina, a little fishing community, big part of the plot actually. And Vince Vaughn and Buscemi were out in the bars and got in a fight with the townies. Apparently, it was mostly Vaughn responsible, and Buscemi pulled him off. Or was trying to stop the fight, or so the story goes. And the guy they were fighting, the townie, stabbed Buscemi 5 times, once in the neck and once in the face, and then the rest in the arm and side. It was potentially life-threatening, but ultimately it was okay. It all worked out, but he does have a huge scar on his face as a result of this. You don't really see it too much. It's on the side, but you can find pictures of it on the internet. And the guy went to jail. It was a whole thing. He could have died. Apparently.
Yeah, Buscemi got jacked up for everything I read, and Vince Vaughn got maced.
Yes, he did.
He was maced. Yeah. But
yeah, so a good time in North Carolina. I was looking for did this change anything? Did this have an effect on his career? It's the only sort of personal story of his at all out there, which is kind of hard to avoid if you get stabbed in the face, that's gonna, be a thing. But yeah, most people don't know about it. And, you don't even really see the scar. I was wondering, is this why he moved back to New York? Was there an appreciable difference? Did he start to do TV after this as a result? And, it's all speculation. There's no one's asked him about it in an interview or anything. So,
I mean, It feels like Domestic Disturbance is the type of movie that could drive you to make that kind of shift even without the stabbing.
Well,
it just seems like a job, It's just like a really quick, I'm making 5 movies a year, and this is one of them kind of deal.
Yeah.
Well, it was
what he does, 180 credits.
It was definitely the end of him being a part of Harold Becker's stable. There was no more Harold Becker productions for me. I've had it. I've had enough, and that might have been it for Harold Becker, to be honest.
Yeah, it seems like it is the end of Harold Becker's illustrious career.
Oh my!
All right, I have a last idea here. We're getting towards the end here, but it occurred to me, like, should we have just structured this entire episode as a Steve Buscemi draft?
Well, we can still do that another time.
Anyway.
There's plenty of opportunity for that.
Well, do you want to do an impromptu? We'll each go around and pick, like, let's say we each get a couple, 2, 3 picks.
Yeah, let's knock it out. Let's knock out like 3 picks each.
We can do that.
Okay. Uh-huh. All right. My favorite Buscemi performance is Reservoir Dogs. Kind of classic first exposure, but
all right,
love it. Mr. Pink kind of steals that movie.
I give the floor to you, Chris.
Okay. I'm gonna go. Boy, it's tough, but I'm gonna go with.
Wait. Point of order. Does TV performances count? Are we counting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay.
So
cool.
I'm.
We know what Chris is.
Yes, I'm going with Anthony Blundetto. That'll be mine right there.
Very, very solid.
All right. Well, then my obvious pick would be Carl Showalter from Fargo.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Classic. He's just funny looking.
I think these are the right. Yeah. Yes, this is the right for top 3, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Now it gets a little tougher, though.
We're doing Snake.
No, not Snake. It goes back to you, Al.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh, it does. Give me a second. Okay. I'll take him in Khrushchev in Death of Stalin.
Nice.
I think that's a really underrated movie. It's one of the best latter day, like, full performance of Buscemi, because we're in an era where he does a lot of cameo work. But that is a full bore Buscemi performance, and it's kind of central. It's it's a weird movie where it's all about these Russians that are mostly played by Englishmen.
Yeah,
and yet having one Buscemi just
Tambor's in there. Tambor's in there.
Yeah, there's Tambor too. You're right.
It's even weirder as a Russian.
But, like, Buscemi's just persona does a lot of characterization work right off the bat, and then he does also just a lot of great, like you said, generous, subtle, partner work there.
Mm-hmm.
He's great.
So I will go for my second pick. I'm going to go. I'll take the starring and director combo of Trees Lounge. I think that's what I'm going to go with right there. I think he does great work in the lead. It's a nice slice of life loser barfly movie, and he does it just fine, and that's for me.
I think it's better than, it's an understated performance and an understated movie, so it's hard to praise it to the absolute heavens, but he's really good, and that is a difficult role, I think.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he wrote it for himself, right? So
because it's not that bombastic, it's not that sympathetic.
No.
Yeah.
Will he sleep with underage Chloe Sevigny? I don't know. Yeah, that's. Is she technically underage in that? Feels like it.
I think she's
certainly feels like it.
Yeah. I mean, the conflict is around that, whether she's technically whatever.
Okay. Well, I got to. I think that a quadrant of his career that needs representation is the 90s action movie Buscemi.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm going to take Armageddon. I think that is a classic performance. Rockhound.
Really?
Course.
Okay.
Yes.
Over Rockhound over Conner.
I think he's better in the role of Rockhound. Yes, I think there's more for him to do, and what he does helps the movie more. Well, I don't know. He's really well used in Con Air. I think the performance in Armageddon is superior.
Yeah, he gets to do more.
Yeah, he gets space madness.
Okay, you threw me for a loop here. Because I feel like I wanted to shout out Miracle Workers just because he's great on the show, and I know you guys can't pick it, but at the risk of not having enough picks left, I want to make. I think I'll go with Airheads for the comedy.
Okay.
Nice,
just because that is a weirdly memorable movie for me. I've seen it more times than I ever thought I would because
I get that.
It's not the best comedy ever. It doesn't have these. I don't know, but it's memorable largely because of the core trio and the sort of chemistry that they have with Mantegna and each other, and he's a big part of that.
Yeah, I think that's good. Mm-hmm.
So let's see. I'm gonna go. I'm trying to think of the smaller parts because I think that's a big part of his career is just the smaller parts, a few scenes where he really makes an impact. And I'm gonna go with his low life character in Desperado. I think he really is a lot of
Oh,
fun
Strong.
in especially in the opening scene where he's kind of telling the whole myth of the Desperado and just his interaction with all the guys in the bar there. It's a really great way to open an action film.
It's interesting. We're already out of what I would consider like the obvious must have choices, with 3 each. Like
well,
he's such a character actor.
Yeah.
And he's such an ensemble player most of the time that he's always great. But what are like the obvious, great roles? It's a little tough to nail down because it really does kind of come down to preference and his like I think what I'm going to take here.
I'd say the big obvious ones are still on the table, or like with him as leading man, as like Ghost World, Boardwalk Empire, and Living in Oblivion.
Yeah.
Are like his biggest roles, but Chris is already steering away from that.
Exactly. So. Yeah, and I'm kind of torn between those. I probably won't be Living in Oblivion, but it's Ghost World or Boardwalk for me, or maybe it'll be that time he was on Saturday Night Live and he played the Mad Hatter. That was a really funny sketch. You seen that?
I haven't. I don't think
he
so.
also he reprised his role as Mr. Pink in a Saturday Night Live sketch.
Did he?
Yeah,
I don't think I've seen that.
Was when Travolta hosted right when Pulp Fiction came out, and they basically did a whole sketch taking kind of Welcome Back Kotter and combining it as a Tarantino movie. Yeah. And
I remember that. Is he in there as Mr. Pink?
He does show up in that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
My favorite. Maybe should we have bonus round? Wait,
I'm taking Nucky. I'm taking Nucky. It's a
Nucky.
massive.
Okay.
Yes. I really associate it with him, and I kind of want a little bit of older Buscemi in here.
Yeah, it's great that he got to carry a show.
Uh-huh.
Bonus round, favorite Saturday Night Live Buscemi sketch.
Oh, okay.
You like the Mad Hatter? I have not watched that. I like the one Coach Bert.
Okay.
Have you seen this?
I remember Coach Bert. Yeah.
Do we need to pause and watch 3 sketches and then come back and?
Well, no, we can tell our listeners to go check out these sketches, or we could explain why they're funny, because that always works great.
That always works great. The premise of Coach Bert is around the Me Too era kicked off, and Buscemi hosted, I believe, and he's like a women's basketball coach, I think, at a college, or maybe it's a high school, and they're having a press conference just to announce to everybody that no, look, we all see what Coach Bert looks like. We did a thorough background check on him, and he actually has not done anything.
Jeez.
And he's just sitting there going, "What?"
Savage. Well, he's in on the joke always, I guess. That's the thing. The Mad Hatter sketches, it's him as the Mad Hatter, and there's a March Hare and a Dormouse, I guess, is the other one, and they're all talking to Alice at the Mad Tea Party, and they're like, "Oh, we're so delightfully mad. I'm so mad I wear my shoes on my hands and my gloves on my feet," that sort of thing. And then they get to Buscemi, he's like, "And I'm so mad that I wash my hands 30 times a day." It's actual mad stuff. It's pretty funny. It's mostly funny because it's Steve Buscemi dressed as the Mad Hatter.
That's already funny.
Yeah. All right, now explain your favorite SNL sketch, Chris.
Oh, well, I must not have. I'm assuming maybe he hosted it once when he was on Boardwalk Empire. I'm just gonna
2 or 3 times, I think.
Oh man, he definitely, I don't think, hosted it in the eras that I was watching. So I mainly just know his appearance in the Welcome Back Kotter / Tarantino sketch. So even though he's only a small part in it, I'm gonna go with that one.
Yeah, that's great.
And I think everyone can appreciate what that was like.
Yeah.
SNL sketch about and Welcome Back, Kotter and Buscemi. Yeah. I seem to remember, like it or not, Mr. Kotter, you're going to die. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good.
Yeah, and Horshack's mother writing a note that says they're allowed to cut the ear off somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, writes itself. Okay.
A good turn from Mike Myers as Mr. Kotter.
I remember that too. Yeah. Okay. Well, we all remember things. That's nice.
Remember?
Yeah, remember when?
Yeah.
It's the weakest form of conversation, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's,
You guys really should check out Coach Burke because you can see
I'm going to.
Jason Sudeikis like sort of feeling out his Ted Lasso character too.
All right. Well, I think we've supplied everyone with a bunch of good recommendations and things to check out. I mean, if you haven't seen Trees Lounge or Living in Oblivion, for example, those are pretty good movies. Really good Buscemi in them. And then maybe we'll all just rewatch Boardwalk Empire or something and talk about it. Probably not, but
Probably
it could
not.
happen.
I think we have other anti-hero shows that we could go through first.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for listening to this and to us. You know what we never talked about? All his voiceover work. He did so many voiceover roles. Like
He's got a pretty distinctive voice.
dozens. You know, he's very popular. He's a Transformer. He's a Monsters Incorporated.
Yes.
He's a Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, and a bunch of other things.
I think
he's Templeton the Rat in Charlotte's Web. That's the role in
I think
Charlotte's
I just
Web,
heard him on some cellular phone commercial. He was like the voice of some animal. I'm pretty sure. I'm very.
He could just be the voice of.
I'm fairly certain it's him.
He has to be an animal to hawk the product.
I think it was.
That's funny. All right. I don't know. Is this even worth asking? Is there anything we would like to see from Steve Buscemi at this point in his career, in his mid-60s? Does he kind of just, enjoys his success and does what interests him only?
He's given me so much already. I want him to just do whatever amuses him and makes him happy. And it seems like a lot of what amuses him amuses me. So that's great.
I like that sentiment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't
Do
mind.
we want to see him like play one big role or something, like some big elder statesman kind of, biopic of somebody or other? I don't know.
I mean, I'd
probably not. I think
I'd like to see him.
It would be nice for him to get his Oscar.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd like to see him work with Tarantino again, even though I guess we're only getting one more Tarantino movie. That would be pretty cool to kind of circle back and maybe have him be a part of that movie, or even with the Coens, because I don't even think he's really done anything with them in several years, and they make a lot of movies.
Not since Lebowski. Yeah.
Well, they're striking off on their own now. I mean, they could have.
I think they're getting back together. I think they are. I think I heard something about that. I mean, they was a thing that Buscemi ends up in smaller and smaller pieces at the end of each Coen Brothers film, and it has been consistent over the 5 films. So there's kind of nowhere left to go after Lebowski when he is dissipated into the air as ash.
They'll need to branch out to sci-fi to like actually vaporize him.
Well, we love him. He's great. He's one of the best, and it's been fun to talk about it today. Thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Great topic, great conversation.